Hello, I'm speaking to you from an undisclosed location. Anyway, so this video is about Prince Andrew and his current predicament. You can see that the Union flag is flying there, indicating Her Majesty the Queen is not in residence. I believe she's at Windsor Castle. They fly the Royal Standard when she's here. So Prince Andrew is in a bit of a bind. His bosom companion of many years, Ghislaine Maxwell, is arrested and she's in custody in New Hampshire. Sorry, when I say that, I don't believe there was ever an intimate relationship between the two. No one's ever suggested that. But they've known each other since they were teenagers. She's 1 year younger than him. So she's been charged with being a procuress and having persuaded the minors to go across borders, state borders, international borders, for the purpose of performing illegal sex acts and so on. So the FBI, they read out this statement about her, accusing of all sorts. So she's been indicted, might be induced to plea bargain. Now, what should he do? People are saying he ought to release a statement saying he's shocked and appalled at the allegations against her, would abhor this sort of behaviour. But of course, he mustn't jump to conclusions and assume that she's guilty or make her situation even more difficult than it already is. I mean, these things are sub judice. I'm not sure what you can say. I know it's a case in the United States, but would that be against their law if you said it here? I don't think so. American libel law seems to be quite weak to me. I don't know that much about it. England has got some of the strongest libel laws in the world, which is why they say London is the libel capital of the world. People often think it's a problem that confines freedom of expression too much, because in an attempt to defend the honour of people whose reputation is assailed. But anyway, if he said anything which would seem to be prejudicial towards her case, she might hit back, because the FBI have got her. They think that she's a rat in a trap, and they've got plenty of evidence. Remember, this story's been going around for about 14 years. Epstein is dead. She is the principal, and so how can she avoid maximum prison time, which could be, I think, up to 35 years? So she might want to sing like a canary, and then say, well, names, testified. You can be our star witness, and then, you know, we'll give you a reduced sentence. I don't think they're going to give her immunity from prosecution. They've got to bang to rights. So who's the biggest scalp that the FBI could get? Well, it's Prince Andrew, of course. So whether he's guilty or innocent, she might be tempted to dob him in to save her own skin. So it does seem to be slightly wrong and unethical that could happen. You know, she might want to bear false witness against him. So he doesn't want to tempt her. He doesn't want to make an enemy of someone who was previously a friend. So one of my sources say about Prince Andrew, so he comes across as a bit of a dimwit who's very impressed with his own title and status, who's always been surrounded with these lackeys and what would the word sycophants be. So his groupies, and that's why he expects to be listened to. He doesn't really listen back. He suffers from low emotional intelligence. His two brothers went to Cambridge. He didn't go to university at all. Now, you could lack academic intelligence and still have emotional intelligence, but he doesn't seem to have that either, which is why he made that very injudicious decision to grant that interview to Emily Maitlis here in this palace way back in November last year, because thinking that the location was freighted with majesty and that would somehow overbear her. I presume that was the strategy of doing it here, or was it a convenient place to stay, as Prince Andrew would say in another context. But no, she was not someone who's going to be awestruck by this place. She's a hard-nosed journalist, and so she got to the truth, striking the right balance between not aggressing him, at the same time not fawning over him. She can't give him an easy ride. People might say, oh, the BBC is the establishment. Of course, this interview is going to be a media whitewash. No, she had to be reasonably firm and hold him to account. So Prince Andrew is being invited to speak to the FBI. There's been back and forth saying he's agreed to speak, but they've not. Why would they on earth not take him off these offers if he had agreed to speak thrice and they've broken their own rules about going to the media? Presumably, if that's true, that they have broken rules, and they certainly spoke to the media about it, they think that this will add on pressure to him, and their strategy is that he will eventually speak because it'll just be impossible not to. The public opinion will demand that he cooperates with them. And so Victoria Roberts, she said that she had sexual intercourse with His Royal Highness at Ghislaine Maxwell's house in London, in Knightsbridge. That's about 2 miles from where I'm standing, and I've identified the location, and that was in 2002. And notably, he didn't specifically deny copulating with her. He said, "I don't ever remember meeting this woman." Now, the thing is, at that time, she was 17, he was 42. Was having sex with a teenager something that was so routine for him at the time that he would forget? Bear in mind the age of consent in this country is 16, so copulation with her would have been lawful at the time. She's saying she was pressurized. Now, pressure isn't rape, but it still doesn't look good for him. Why has he given this non-committal answer? Presumably he's worried just in case proof positive would emerge. So it seemed to be a somewhat cunning strategy, only to deny things which he thought were definitely false, and then to acknowledge things which are true. He couldn't say he'd never met Epstein or he'd never met Ghislaine Maxwell, but he did tell some stupid lies, His Royal Dryness, about how he didn't perspire till recently because of whatever medical condition which he didn't actually name, and all sorts of other things about when he ceased contact with Jeffrey Epstein and things like that. So anyway, what's going to happen? I presume his lawyers are saying, whatever you do, please listen to this advice. Do not go to the United States. You might get their own free will to give an interview and then get arrested. The thing is, obviously you could be extradited from here, but that is difficult. It's a lengthy, expensive process. If there's anyone that they would try to extradite, it's him. That might damage relations somewhat. But, Prince Andrew is not very popular. He's seen to have dragged the royal family's name through the mire. He's also miserly, getting a few £1,000,000 a year from his mother for making the occasional public appearance, and then was always expecting other people to pick up the bill, which is why he used to like to hang out with billionaires like Mr. Epstein, however sleazy they were, because he wanted them to pay for him, but he would sing they had to sing for their supper. He was notoriously rude to staff, a bit emotionally incontinent, throwing a wobbly one time when armed officers drew a gun on him in the palace gardens because they didn't know who he was. They thought, is it an intruder? They were being vigilant, and if they're not with it, then they could get in trouble too for not being alert enough. So he's what was I going to say? He really doesn't add glory to the royal house. There are all sorts of things about him. A bit of a hooray Henry, an upper class twit. Does he mean well? Now, my sources say, is it likely he copulated with Miss Roberts? Well, yes, extremely likely. It's exactly the sort of thing that he would do. He was always known as Randy Andy. Rumour was going round in the 90s that he had HIV. I don't know if that's true or not. Now, that wouldn't reflect any discredit on him in my book, but some people would think so. Certainly, well known to be promiscuous. Had a number of girlfriends since he divorced. And again, I don't think that's bad, but some people do. Is he just frankly so thick that he wouldn't have thought something is a bit amiss when Jeffrey Epstein in his 50s has these teenage girls here, and is she the age of consent? Should I bother asking? I mean, even if he's not copulating them, is she? Now, Epstein could easily have hid this from him because he had many houses, and make sure that his stable was never in the same house that Andrew was in at a particular time, or these were large compounds, make sure they're in a different building from His Royal Highness. So the Duke of York, he is Prince Charmless, or the Duke of Puke, and that's that. So he's stepping back from his royal duties. He's really not acquitted himself well, hadn't figured out proper answers. So the written answers could be submitted to him. He could sit down with the solicitors and carefully craft it, admitting what he absolutely has to, being silent on some issues, vehemently denying other ones. They could interview him here. He could be extradited from here. It has happened. It was a sort of unequal treaty signed under Blair. We're quite easy to extradite people from the United Kingdom to the United States, but not the other way around. Obviously, grossly unfair. Anyway, so that is enough about His Royal Highness. Toodaloo.